I was a 3-year-old kid, I didn't have the greatest grasp on the difference between reality or fiction and was extremely skittish. I would easily get unsettled by stories of monsters, and even the idea of the Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus really frightened me. I also spent my childhood mostly as a mama's boy. I clung to my mom's side in a literal sense. Even when she would do dishes, I wanted to sit on the counter and watch her do what I consider now one of the most mundane and awful chores that I absolutely despise doing with all of my being. This really irritated her, and she never had any personal space except for when she needed to use the bathroom, which even then I would stick my grubby little hands under the door yelling, "Mama, Mama." My dad must have grown tired of my mom's complaints about me following her around like a duckling, and not knowing what else to do, went out and bought me an Xbox with a game called Grab by the Ghoulies. Knowing my nature as a kid now, that probably was the worst choice you could have chosen. Grab by the Ghoulies is a beat-em-up adventure kinda horror game, where Cooper, the main character, has his girlfriend Amber kidnapped by Baron Von Ghoul and a bunch of monsters he has. You go into the mansion and start beating the absolute shit out of everything in there, using the environment or just straight up throwing hands in order to get through the hordes of monsters that keep Cooper from his lover. He's definitely a simp. The transition between levels had a segment where you walk through hallways filled with trophy mounts of monsters alongside both walls. Randomly, a trophy will try to jump scare you and deal damage to Cooper unless you can manage to react to the quick time event it gives you in order to not lose health. Not the greatest mechanic if you're a dad trying to get his kid into video games. My dad had given me the controller and really pushed me to beat up the imps in the beginning lobby. And since I didn't have a grasp on video games just being fiction, it freaked me out because I felt like I was controlling something real and didn't want to hurt any imps or allow Cooper to get hurt himself. I also hadn't wanted to disappoint my dad and tell him no. The imps also reacted to their comrades dying, which shook the hell out of my 3-year-old brain. With a lot of button mashing and half of me barely able to watch the screen, I was able to beat them up and progress to the next section of the game, which would immediately shut down my bravery. The hallway transition began, and the first trophy that jumped at me scared the absolute bejesus out of me. Fear-driven me had run behind the couch and watched in terror as poor Cooper progressively died in the hallway, mirroring my fear alongside a very puzzled father, standing and witnessing all this unfold right in front of him. He picked up the controller and continued to coax me into playing, which had no effect on me. I decided I liked the safety of being behind the couch and didn't want the responsibility of having to save Cooper's girlfriend. He and my dad could figure that out themselves. My dad had given up on me not budging, which led to the Xbox collecting dust over time, and me going back to my behaviors of being a mama's boy. This didn't stop their efforts completely though. By the time I was 4, my family decided to go on a vacation to Oregon, which prompted my mother to get me a Game Boy Advance to try and give me something for a 2-day trip. She was only able to get me Earthworm Jim and Super Mario Bros. 2 with the money she earned from waiting tables, and we set off on a long ass drive. To both my mom and dad's surprise, I buried myself into both these games. I legit played them for 8-hour intervals, only really stopping to eat or sleep on the drive. I do not know how the hell my eyeballs hadn't melted out of my head, or how I didn't get motion sick, because now if I even look at my phone when I'm riding in a car, I'm ready to vomit everywhere. I don't have any memory of it really either, but my mother said that even when we arrived in Oregon, I still played the Game Boy non-stop and hadn't cared at all that we made it. I would make a huge deal out of it because I had an immediate addiction to pulling turnips out of the ground and throwing them at little BDSM looking dudes. Apparently they're called sniffets, by the way. When we came back, I now had a hobby, playing Earthworm Jim, Super Mario 2, and entirely not touching consoles. My dad used to go to a local shop near our house at the time called CD World, where he went to buy new rock albums that came out, or ones he was just looking to add to his collection. Once in one of our journeys for some albums that Fantana would probably give a 4, my dad must have decided that the Xbox wouldn't cut it and bought me a PlayStation. With that PlayStation, he got Walt Disney World Quest Magical Racing Tour. That is so hard to read out loud. Pac-Man World and Eminem's Show Shopped. When we got home, inspired by my love for my Game Boy, I booted all these games up to give them a try. Pac-Man World's Game Over immediately freaked me out and I hid under my bed, but was determined to try the other 2. Eminem's game wasn't too bad actually looking back on it, although it gave me really bad anxiety from how loud the goddamn sound effects were. Also, that game was totally a Crash Bandicoot ripoff, but really bad. Then I tried Walt Disney World Quest Magical Racing Tour. and my little 4-year-old self fell in love instantly. It's a simple racing game with a bunch of characters from the Disney universe, which really led to a domino effect of me trying a bunch of different games afterwards, as my understanding of games really just being fiction and something fun to play to pass the time started to cement itself. So fast forward trying all these games, I worked up the courage to play Grab by the Ghoulies by the time I was 5, and it really wasn't all that bad. Albeit it gave me bad anxiety when I still went through the hallway segments. But to me it was just worth getting to play the parts where I could beat up the monsters and just have a blast. Eventually I was able to play through most of the game. I don't really remember if I beat it as a kid, and that led up to playing Halo at a close friend's house for the first time and being able to play Conker's Bad Fur Day in daycare, which I had made a video on. It led to me getting over my fears and leading up to one of my most favorite ways to pass time when I was growing up. I mostly wanted to make this though to remind myself and others that we are fully capable of getting over our fears. Tackling something head on can lead you to getting over that fear or even turn into something you love. I used to be afraid to play games because I had no understanding that it didn't affect anything in reality, but constantly listening to my intuition and trying them led to a love that I gained that had replaced my fear. Maybe my point is if you're afraid to do anything, like ask somebody out, or maybe even just hanging out with a new group of people, give it a try and you might realize it's not that bad. It could even lead to sparking a new love for you. And I don't know, you never know, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching my video, and I'm about, so goodbye now.